Alright, what is going on, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen? The ACMGS Gamer here. Today we're here to talk about an article that was published by Kotaku and authored by Ethan Gack. If this name sounds familiar, he did an article a few months ago when Far Cry 6 was, when the launch trailer was first announced, saying how we are going to be in a quote-unquote shitstorm of discourse 6 months from now, and that never happened. So, with that being said, we're going to go through this article and explain, or hopefully interpret, what he's trying to do exactly. The article is titled, "If You're Going to Preview Far Cry 6, At Least Do It Right." And as you can tell by the title, it's going to be an interesting article. First paragraph, Far Cry 6 is still over a month out from release, and while there remains plenty we don't know yet, a massive bunch of hands-on previews dropped this week across various gaming outlets and influencer videos, shedding more light on the game. Okay? So, bunch of different game companies and game journalists got to play the game. The problem is that, is what they illuminate and what they don't. So essentially, he has an issue with how they did their coverage, is what this entire article is about. They paint Far Cry 6 as the latest predictable blockbuster, albeit one with aspirations of saying something meaningful about revolution and the oppression that spurs it. Sound familiar? The previews seem to be just there to tell us whether this shooting is any good and what novel ways Ubisoft has found to dress up its to-do list icon-filled maps rather than to interrogate why we should expect anything more from Far Cry this time around. In some ways, it feels like we've learned nothing at all. Well, that's kind of funny because, like, the whole point of a preview or of a demo is for people to test it out and say, yeah, the shooting is good. They're not there to really test anything else except the gameplay, because the story is going to be saved for when the game actually releases. And he's saying, if you're not a fan of the same stuff from the previous games, don't buy it. There's a lot of people that like Far Cry games for the way that they're made and for the shooting specifically and for the gameplay. So his issue is different than everybody. He seems to be the only one that has an issue with this take. Not your granddad's revolution, quipped IGN. Far Cry 6 is a huge game in every sense, announced VG 24/7. It looks to be a big, beautiful game, concluded VentureBeat. Even the previews that acknowledged the series' troubled thematic past remained optimistic. It might not get in the way this time around. Hopefully the enjoyment we get from flying around in our wingsuits, firing over-the-top weapons, and fighting alongside a cute wiener dog named Chorizo doesn't contrast too harshly with the story of an island political peril, wrote Game Informer. Now, before we go on, if any of these quotes seem like they're more so on the praising of the good side, all of these quotes are actually taken out of context from their reviews, and even the links to the articles are messed up. So this guy is taking quotes out of context completely in regards to all of those different previews that were given, where they went and they did their own articles on them. What I've learned from previews like these and others, Kotaku was not invited to these demos. I wonder why. Is that Far Cry 6 will let you force helicopters to land so you can steal them rather than just blowing it up. The series' skill tree has been replaced with a loot-based system where stats and abilities are activated by equipping new guns and armor. Chickens, alligators, and other murderous amigos will even fight by your side while you're torching island compounds with DIY flamethrowers. I don't see any problem with any of that, to be honest. What I have heard much less about, if anything at all, is what Far Cry 6 does to prevent itself from feeling like another gory vacation to an exoticized country created by Canadian studios under the umbrella of a French company. Again, nobody cares. This is exactly why people play Far Cry to begin with, is to do exactly what he's complaining about. Maybe that's by design. Narrative payoffs are an easy thing to hide from preview demos under the auspice, whatever that word is, of not spoiling anything. Well, no shit. If you're gonna do a preview, you're not gonna want to get spoiled. They leave that out for a reason, so that it can be left for the release for everyone to enjoy at the same time. Maybe it's because at its core, Far Cry 6 remains fundamentally about a game about finding cool and chaotic new ways to blow shit up. So what if it is? That's the reason people play it. These underlying tensions should be at the heart of deciding what Far Cry 6 might be and whether it would be worth engaging with, but somehow in the year of our Lord 2021, such concerns are still mostly relegated to the written equivalent of a grimace emoji buried in a few paragraphs from the end. Again, this... Far Cry 6 made it waves back in May when the narrative director said the game was not intended to make a political statement about Cuba, despite being a game about revolutionary guerrilla fighters in an island nation in Cuba where you apparently heal yourself by smoking a cigar. He elaborated days later in a statement on Ubisoft's website that Far Cry 6's story was political. It's a story about modern revolution must be, he wrote. Still, though, it was not to be taken as a binary political statement specifically on the current political climate in Cuba, despite the development team explicitly visiting Cuba for inspiration. The game director also wrote, Far Cry 6 is a brand that in its DNA seeks to have mature complex themes balanced with levity and humor. One doesn't exist without the other, and we have attempted to achieve this balance with care. Whether it can actually navigate that balance is one of the central questions facing the game, and only a few previews I've come across actually grappled with it. Well, here's the crazy thing. We won't actually know what the story is and how you're going to navigate that balance until you play the whole thing. So he's worrying about something that may not even be something to worry about. Meanwhile, some writers who might have been able to provide alternative perspectives were shut out of the process. I was kindly invited to cover that build for an outlet to offer a Latinx perspective, and Ubisoft declined it since I'm not based in the US. Wrote into the Spine editor, Diego Nicolas, whatever that is, on Twitter. According to what Ubisoft rep told that guy, that was because of concerns over server ping times since the Far Cry 6 demo would be run over parsec. Bad ping would mean a laggy demo experience. The feel of the gameplay was the priority, it seems, rather than the story and its political trappings. Once again, the gameplay is the point of people getting a preview to play the game before anyone else, to get a feel for the gameplay, not the story. This guy is basically just writing multiple paragraphs about how the outlets are not covering the story, even though that's not the point of the demos. Most previews haven't grappled with the company behind the game either. Some sites currently boycotting Activision Blizzard coverage wrote about Far Cry 6 without even a mention of the fact that hundreds of current and former Ubisoft employees recently petitioned the company for new processes and rules for dealing with the workplace abuse. The company might be willing to turn the page on the news cycle and move on, but employees aren't. One of the Ubisoft studios racked by allegations of employment mistreatment was Toronto, which is currently leading development of Far Cry 6, while Sledgehammer Games acknowledged recent allegations. During a preview for Call of Duty Vanguard, the obligation to ask Ubisoft about that seems to have expired. It hasn't. That is still a very much going on thing, but the development process behind the scenes and a preview for the game that they're making, one doesn't have to incorporate the other. Just saying. There's a thing that happens in a lot of games where something hasn't come out yet, and despite every piece of available information and every bone in your body telling you it will be X, there still remains a shred of hope it might turn out to be Y. Like I said again, this guy is worrying about something that we don't even know if it's going to be an issue yet. Or according to him, he doesn't know if it's going to be an issue. Far Cry 6's tale of revolutionary politics in the face of post-colonial exploitation seems ill-suited to the incentive constraints and bloodlust of a first-person shooter, and even worse fit for a company like Ubisoft with a long track record of trying to sanitize its products for mass consumption. Whatever. And then the last paragraph is speaking on what he said, had said previously. He said, quote, I got a lot of bad faith criticism back in July for proposing that we were only a few months away from a shitstorm of discourse around Far Cry 6, which hasn't been the case. I hadn't played the game yet. How could I know? Then why would you be writing this article and still predicting that shit's gonna happen? Clearly, I was prejudging Far Cry 6 based on my existing biases. But I think of it more like looking up a weather forecast. It's unpredictable, things can change. The stormiest day can turn out to be a lovely one instead. I acknowledge the possibility, but I'll believe it's actually happening when I see it. In the meantime, I'll plan accordingly. Kotaku has gone down the fucking gutter in recent years, and it amazes me that shit like this exists on the internet. This whole article is all about one guy complaining about how other articles were previewing the game for not focusing on a story that has yet to be released. It doesn't make any sense, and it's just it's not even worth your time reading. There's no news to be had here. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm excited for Far Cry 6. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to play it with my friends, and I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it. Because it's one of the only games that's coming up pretty soon. And it's going to be towards the end of the year that I'm actually genuinely excited for. But thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.